over other. It's not a relatedness, it's a superior, separative, superior, dominating, controlling trip that it tries to run. But at the same time, the Taoists show to a way of functioning with decisiveness. Taoism is not a passive or inert or quietistic religion or practice at all. It's being able to act and to function with the flow, with the grain of nature, so that your actions are in harmony with nature and therefore by themselves successful. And Taoism has proven itself to be remarkably resilient. It's not by any means a religion of ancient China. It's a 5,000-year or longer tradition and teaching that is alive and well to this day in communist China and other parts of the world. And we also have to recognize that we're not going to be able to go back to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. We're never going to recreate great areas of wilderness we've lost. We're never going to be able to get away from city living. There is such a thing as urban shamanism, and it's one of our tasks to really invent that. That's something brand new. Aboriginal cultures do not have it. How do you live in a city environment in the late 20th century while recognizing that in this city environment too, the other worlds, the worlds of spirits, of animals and plants, is right there in the streets of New York and under the concrete, in the sewers. Some of you may have seen this film, The Last Wave, which is about the Australian Aboriginal, the survival of an Australian Aboriginal culture under the streets of Sydney. It's a very interesting story. So this is where this is going to require all the resourcefulness that we can come up with. We have to study the past, take the valuable lessons that we've forgotten, bring them back into, put them together with the new information that we're getting, that science has presented us with, plus our knowledge of the limitations of the existing political structures, and go to work and use whatever you can. Spoiled.
How do we step aside from the information that, all of us here obviously must think about this, information coming through the television of the great mediator, this fascism that's so subtle because it's so sub-embedded, because it's entirely a censorship of economy. So you experience it just a pragmatic reality. You don't experience it as what it is, controlling and telling us how we are to perceive reality. And, we had the 60s, we had an inkling of the shamanic or the experiential, then that was pushed aside. So I think it's a test case to watch with this election. I'm sorry that you said when Bush is elected. I'd like to think that's an if. But when you talked about that unexploded bomb, well, let's see how the forces of disinformation can repress that unexploded bomb and allow Bush to get reelected, or how to learn to continue to look between the lines and not... I was close to historical events, learned to look between the lines, and yet I ingest daily stuff that I don't question because it seems low on the order of priority, whether I should look and see what is this really about. But we're given a 360 hologrammatic redefinition of our reality entirely through the media. And lazily we consent and co-create by ingesting it. So that's the thing, to sidestep that and look for the nature ally.
You have to look at it with the same attitude as you look at visions presented to you in a drug state or in a dream state, with that same impeccability, with that same discrimination. Keep testing, keep looking. Use what you know. Compare. Does this true for you? Is this what's really behind it? What's the hidden message? What's the hidden agenda?
And trust
the
your
stuff that's
instinct.
Barraging us from television or from the media is exactly. It's a complete mix of truth with undescribable dosages of fantasy, hallucination, projection, disinformation, malevolent intrusions, and there's no shortcut. There's no way of sidestepping it. You can't sidestep it. You have to confront it, deal with it, look at it, know it.
But when you look at the cultural images that we've inherited, I think it's very easy to see that monotheism is a great deal of what lies at the root of our problem. Because, it was Jung who made the observation that as we picture our gods, so then do we model our psyches, that in fact our gods are models of our psyches. And monotheism, which is basically the idea that God is all-powerful, omnipresent, male, and not to be trifled with, if that's your model of the psyche, well, then you're describing someone who's extremely pathological. I mean, that is a pathological model of the personality. And yet, how many generations of men have behaved as though they were Yahweh? And we buy into this unquestioningly.
The issue of
Yahweh is the only God, the only divinity, the only God in all of world mythology who never has sex with a female. Most other creation myths involve sexual or have consorts, the Indian god. Yahweh, who is the Christian and basically the Islamic god too, is the only one who never has contact with a female, either human or divine. Pretty interesting. That's our God.
I'm just going to say this thing about abortion.
Yep.
It's
back there.
The metaphor that you'd say that man's law would be stronger than the laws of nature, that women experience stringently as the doors open and close of birth and death, and that man would impose himself on the doorway between nature through the woman's body to creation. That's the final metaphor.
Well, that's omnipotence.
Yahweh. Yes.
Omnipotence. We can interfere with anything. We can do anything.
Back there.
Back here somewhere.
I mean, much or not close to all of what you say is really pearls to my ears, and I feel there's a resonance, especially when people have waited to hear something described in a certain way. It's like coming home. There's a real fine edge that I feel in myself when we get to a place of an us and them really strong. And I noticed that when this man brought up the thing about the politicians, you know, there was a certain uncomfortableness and a kind of laughter that very easily came forth. And I know that in my work with the nuclear waste issue, it's very easy to get in this almost victimized role. It's like someone else is doing it to us. And it seems to me, in part of almost strategizing together, if we really want this truth that you're, describing to really be present on this planet and in our midst, that there's one aspect of like we have work to do ourselves. That's to me the strongest thing that you said. If you can really embody it impeccably and continue to look at your own homework, that you don't have to so much worry about what's going on around you. But there's another place where it seems to me we do have to worry or be concerned or care for what's going on around us. And in being impeccable on that level, it seems to me that some of the mind change has to do with this shift of us, them, and seeing them as the enemy and us as the victim. And I know that in the nuclear work, one of the strongest things we did was to take a group of people down to Westinghouse, down to where they're supposedly burying the waste in the ground, to see that the people that have taken on this job are actually, they really believe they're doing the right thing, and they really believe that they're doing it for us. And to almost from that place of common ground start trying to share this information. So I'm wondering in terms, I guess I just really felt personal need to comment about that in face of this us-them place that we can get into, and to see if you have any comments about our impeccability in terms of dealing with this situation correctly.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't really think in terms of us and them. I really resist paranoia. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, or I don't believe that anybody is running the world. I think it has a life of its own. I think that I agree with you. The major task is the task of working on oneself, but not entirely to the exclusion of social responsibility. The major contribution most people can make in the theater of social responsibility is clarity of thought and intention. The general tone of the discussion arises out of the quality of the people participating in it. And you can reach most people if you will start with something that they're familiar with and then try and lead them out of it. I mean, I'm amazed in all the years that I've been talking about the things that I talk about. I have never been heckled, ever. No one has ever stood up quaking with righteous